As we have said previously, the tribulation has started long ago. All that's happening is it is rapidly intensifying. That is what the phony war on terrorism, the Twin Towers, the genuine hot wars, the mass satanic sacrifice, the ever-increasing earthquakes, the typhoons and hurricanes. Today's news, I think today is the 6th of October, 1 million people have been moved from the east coast of China. 1 million people, in order to avoid an upcoming typhoon or hurricane, which is the same thing. You know, we've got the ever-increasing earthquakes, unpredictable and catastrophic weather, volcanic eruptions, violence throughout the earth, fornication, adultery, gross immorality, and constant threats to frighten and scare you to death. Although it is very sad and tragic, it is all part of Satan's last fling to kill as many as possible. He hopes not only physically to kill them or kill us, but spiritually. Lying is his language and killing is his business. He wants no flesh to be saved alive. This is the video, the previous video I did. You'll see it there. No flesh saved alive. Christ defines his activity for us in John 8:44, which we have quoted hundreds of times now. Of your father, the devil, and the lust of your father he will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So we can see his character going right back to the beginning, lies and murder. It therefore follows that when you listen to our religious leaders and our political leaders, you can see who they're serving. Yesterday I had an email telling me that Hagee has once again, Pastor Hagee has once again called for a preemptive bombing strike on Iran. You know, stop making excuses and accepting lies as normal. Because if you do, you're only lying to yourself and assisting in the deception of yourself. And remember that birds do together. Therefore, you're simply tagging yourself as a liar and a murderer. And the above verse we quoted did link the liars and the murderers directly with Satan. He said, you are of your father. And Christ did this many times. Now, why am I mentioning that? Well, you see, the devil is having his last fling, but that is not the day of the Lord. That's the devil in his death throes. That's what that's all about. And all this havoc that we're seeing. The death of not the death, but the day of the Lord is entirely different. This is God's intervention into human affairs. We have not reached that point as yet, but it is near and now at hand. And its purpose is to purify the putrid earth from the depravity of universal sin. I think that we should have a brief look at the day of the Lord. You know, in the scripture we started with said, I was in spirit on the Lord's day and heard behind me a voice, a great voice, as of a trumpet. Now that's very interesting, because what we find in Revelation is what some refer to as the trumpet plagues, because they are preceded by the blast of a trumpet. Now I'm just going to be picking out bits and pieces from here so you can understand the huge difference between what is taking place now and what is going to take place. You see, we're going to see in Revelation chapter 8 and verse 6, it says, and the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. And the verse I just read which was Revelation 1:10, it said, the voice that John heard on the Lord's day was as of a trumpet. So that's why I said you better get in touch with what the annual feast days are, because they're very important. They're very important. And trumpets, the Feast of Trumpets, which preceded the Feast of Booths, or Feast of Tabernacles as it's known, I believe it signifies Christ's intervention into world affairs. Thus it's interesting to me that in Genesis 1, in Revelation 1 verse 10, it speaks about Christ's voice as a trumpet. And then when we reach into Revelation 8 and verse 6, it tells us, and the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. And I'm just going to pick out some of the things that happen in the day of the Lord. He says, the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of trees was burnt up, and all green grass. Now, you need to just get your own Bible, slow down, read this, and contemplate what this means. The second angel sounded, another trumpet blast, and a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. Maybe a meteorite, an asteroid, or some junk of heavenly rock, whatever, but large enough that it says, and the third part of the sea became blood, and the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. This is the day of the Lord. Nothing to do with Satan now. And the third angel sounded, another trumpet blast, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. So we've got 2 things coming out of the sky. This is the second one. Burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of water. And the name of the star is called wormwood, and the third part of the water became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. You know, the next bit we have dealt with in the previous video about the days being shortened, and we've got a document about that. But the sun is going to be reduced, the light is going to be reduced by 1/3, the moon is going to be reduced by 1/3, and the stars. It's going to get cold. We're talking about global warming. We are going to get cold, really, really cold.